Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bite the Bullet. I'm your host, Jay Reese, and man, oh man, do I have an awesome guest for you today. And I know you guys are like, you say that every time because it's true, everybody. Today, we have Cheryl Bassitt, and me and her connected almost about a month ago, and I can already tell you, she is just an awesome ray of light, positivity, inspiration, and generally wants to help people. And I know she's going to bring a lot of wisdom and knowledge to everyone out here. But let me stop rambling and give her a proper intro by reading off her credentials. Cheryl Bassitt is a #1 international best-selling author and host of the show Kitchen Table Conversations, where it is her mission to ignite new conversations, strengthen families, and create a positive ripple in the world. Inspired by her own family's journey, Cheryl's work for creating unshakable and unbreakable families is recognized as one of the top 5 next best brilliant ideas for humanity. As an international best-selling author and speaker, she shares her journey and her true pathway of how to connect with your family for life. Her message is grounded in 4 gifts that give families everything they need to listen, respect, support, and celebrate one another. Cheryl is also an award-winning creator of the Unstoppable Family Meaning Toolkit. But Cheryl's message doesn't stop at the kitchen table. Oh, no. Her 4 gifts are powerful and transformative at the boardroom tables as well. Today, Cheryl and I will chat about her journey, how she helps others, and briefly on the 4 gifts that will help transform you and your family. Let's go ahead and welcome Cheryl Bassitt. Hello, Cheryl.
How are you? Thank you so much.
I am well, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. And I'm ready for us to, this is 2021 and I'm ready for this beautiful new year. So
Exactly. It's so funny how like a lot of people we're so done with 2020, and I know there have been a lot of terrible things that's going on, but I've come to believe that 2020 is a reflection of how either you were living your life or just your behaviors, maybe subconsciously, right? So those who had a very horrible, terrible year, I'm assuming it was behavior, unless there was a death or something just completely out of your happening, right? But 2020 is definitely going to be a better year for a lot of us, hopefully.
Yeah, I feel like I agree. I think 2020 was such a transformative year. And but I also believe that even if it felt like an awful year to some people, it's in that contrast that sometimes we find our greatest opportunities and some of the things that actually motivate us to make changes. So I feel like whether you had a good year or a bad year in your perspective, all of it is perfect because it's exactly what you needed, and it's kind of like the life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And if I stay in that frame of mind, I feel like that 2020 actually could have probably I think a lot of people look back and see it as one of the most important years of their lives.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's all about how you look at it, right? Funny enough, I was actually reading this morning in a positive quotes book that I have, and it was saying how a lot of people hate the fact that roses have thorns, right? But when you really think about it, you should be glad that thorns have roses. And I was sitting there thinking like, that is quite an interesting concept. And the quote kind of goes on to sit there and say, like, there's so many people out there who have collies and other types of dogs and various different types of pet that they love wholeheartedly for the unconditional love that they receive from that animal. But they just wish the animal wouldn't have such amounts of poop or all these other bad traits, right? So I'm sitting there thinking like, that's actually true. There's so much good, and everything that has good has some attribute that we really don't like, but you have to focus on the good parts, right?
Correct.
Or at least you should.
Well, we were just talking about that, right? That which you focus on, you give energy to, and you strengthen. And so it's true with people. It's true with animals. I have a house full of animals. If you want to talk about animals, I have a dog, 3 cats, bunnies, We have birds, we have turtles, we have 7 aquariums. So like,
Wow, do you have a sanctuary, Cheryl? What's
yeah,
going on?
like the kids come over, our grandkids come over, and they're like, "Can we go to the zoo at Grandma's house?" You know. So,
Oh, I love that. But speaking of your family, I know your family is one of the reasons why you started the Four Gives and building and sharing your story. So if you don't mind, could you elaborate on your story and how you came up with the Four Gives?
yeah. So it's funny how life, like you can look back and it's easier to see those defining moments. Just like I said, 2020 will be for some people, for a lot
Right.
of people, but
Mm-hmm.
I can look back all the way to, and I'm not going to talk about my childhood because like that could be a long show. But the point being is that what happens even to us as children obviously drive that determination. So when I look at my childhood and my upbringing, I know it was a big factor as to why I was passionate about having a different relationship with my children. And so, I mean, kind of one of those funny defining moments for us was when my boys were very young, I'm going to say 6 and 8 potentially. And they came home from school asking, I just spent the whole morning trying to figure out the finances, which I think a lot of families can relate to. And I feel like I just got it down to a science of how I could make this work. Right. I had enough month and money to match. They came home from school and they're like, I need socks and I need shirt and I need this and I need that. And all of a sudden I just like, they started, and I needed new cleats. That was one that, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's, we've just spent $150 in, 1 minute of conversation here. And then it was Brian, my oldest son at the time, who said, oh yeah, and can you take me to the store because I need a tube of chapstick. And it was the chapstick, right, that pushed me into not one of my finer mom moments.
Right.
And
I can't relate to that at all.
No, I can't relate to that at all. Left my kids speechless. And so, that night we sat down and we had what I would call our first official family meeting. That was, and I thought, oh my gosh, like we're going to sit and we're going to get on the same page. I'm going to impart all my wisdom onto my children and straighten them out, of course.
Right.
And what I found was what unfolded was not what I expected. And it was this beautiful coming together of them really wanting to be a part of the solution. That it wasn't about, it was how we started to create a team and moving forward. So as we created this kind of like Sunday night at 7, coming together, having this connection each week and making it a priority, we started to develop what were originally called rules. And over the course of time, I didn't like the word rules because rules feel limiting and kind of, like, and so over time we started calling them, and I started calling them gifts, because really they were about the gifts and how we were supporting each other in that process, and the gifts that got to unfold in each one of us, and how it allowed us to bloom and grow and flourish and become better versions of ourselves. So the 4 rules ended up being the 4 gifts. And so flash forward now many years, I'm in companies and I'm sharing this family meeting concept and how you just need to sit down with your family. And I got this deer in the headlight look, like, well, how do you do that? And so that was really the next start of a journey of how can I take what we did, create something that gives other families a foundation. They're certainly going to make it their own, but these 4 gifts sort of nicely wrap around it initially, and then allow families to unwrap those 4 gifts in a way that really is just beautiful for their family as well.
Wow. I love that. Taking a moment that I admit, like, I know I've made my mistakes as a father, and I know I've lost my cool, just like how you were saying that was a moment where you probably didn't say the most appropriate things. But I love how that became such a transformational moment for you and your family. So are you able to elaborate with us now about what the 4 gifts are, or is that something you prefer everyone go to your website for?
Oh, no. It, like, for me, the 4 gifts, like if no one ever buys my family meeting toolkit, or no one gets my book, or nobody, I like, my heart is, I want these 4 gifts to be something that a family, because they're simple, they're 6-year-old simple in reality. There's so much depth to them in terms of how they can transform. And so I share them everywhere. And I that's like, when I leave this earth, that's what I want people to know these 4 gifts are there for them if they want to tap into them. And I do believe that, in fact, I'll share that when we get to the 3rd gift, you'll hear how at the time, my 13-year-old son probably grasped that gift better than I did.
Okay.
And so that's how simple they are. And we can actually go through them if that's where we're moving to. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
That's
please.
my heart. Yeah. So the first gift is the gift of listening, which everybody goes, okay, well, yeah, we know that one, but how are we doing it, right? And how are we really listening to one another? And so we unwrap that gift by disconnect to connect. And, there's so much more that goes into it, but in its most simplistic form, it's just remembering that your children, the person in front of you, even in this moment, right? We're on technology. It's not that technology's bad, right? Technology has allowed us to do things way beyond our expectations. But in that moment right now, you're more important than this, right? In myself.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes just putting those things aside and being present. It's about being present. And right now there's so many distractions, and it's not just the kids. I mean, we've seen the family of 4 that goes out to dinner. Well, not recently, we haven't, but we've seen the family that goes out to dinner, and they're all on their technology. And this was supposed to be their moment, right? I mean, have you gone out and seen that where the whole family's sitting at the table and everybody's on?
Yeah, by far. Like, even when I used to live in New York, and I used to have to go out and meet with like my actor friends and some other colleagues and stuff, and we would all be on our phones. And luckily, I had a friend who was wise enough to say, "Hey, we're supposed to be sitting here together, talking and listening and communing. Let's put down our phones. The first person to grab their phone has to pay for the bill." Right? So that was my first time realizing, like, hey, we need to start disconnecting from these phones more. So that was my time that I noticed that, but I understand completely because I've seen that.
Yeah, and honestly, people are addicted to it, and I don't even think they realize it. Right? It's an addiction, and it's like I have to know, I have to be connected all the time, and so we do this whole thing around that awareness, but you would think it's just like, okay, we have to tell our kids to stay off their phones. It's not. It's actually the adults are actually sometimes the worst offenders.
Yeah.
And so it's just about really standing in that awareness, about really being present, really listening, really hearing that person. And so that's the first thing that we did. We put them in, and sometimes towards the end of our family meeting, we would actually get them back out and share a video or something we did learn. It wasn't, again, but for a period of time, a half hour, sometimes an hour, we just put them away. And didn't make them, we made the person the priority. So that was the first thing. So that's the first gift, the gift of listening. The second gift is the gift of respect. And this one's kind of, it's fun. And, oh, darn, I always do this. I was like, I should have it out because, and my dog, I have this rubber duck. We all remember the little yellow duck, right? Yeah. That sits on it. So how we unwrap the gift of respect is we do something called Don't Quack the Duck. And so it's fun, right? It's really meant to be fun, but it's really amazing when people really stop to think about it. But the duck is the idea. So if somebody immediately, if you have an idea and you share it and somebody immediately will say, shoot the duck. I used to say, don't shoot the duck, but I figured shooting wasn't a good idea. So we changed it to quack. But the idea is that if you have an idea and you share it and somebody immediately dismisses it or, says, oh, that'll never work or, whatever, you can pick up your duck and, quack it at them, right? Yeah. Because, and it's a way to remind them that they've just quacked your duck. And so we would have literally what we call no duck quacking sessions. No ideas are bad. Everything's open. Everybody felt safe to share. And we do it even in companies. And it's amazing how much duck quacking goes on in companies, by the way.
Interesting. Okay. I love that. I love that concept. Yeah.
So it's just a fun way to bring awareness to it. But let me tell you also why it's really important. Our children need to feel like they have a voice. Yes. And so in these no duck quacking sessions or in our meetings when we were, we had this gift of unwrapping, like, don't quack the ideas, let everybody's ideas be heard and respected in the moment. One time David, who I don't know, he's probably 11, 12 years old, said, well, I don't think that we should put a helicopter landing pad on our roof. And my son Brian, who's very practical and older,
Uh-huh.
looked at him and he goes, "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." Right.
Mm.
And David, of course, got to quack his
Yeah.
duck at Brian,
Uh-huh.
right? And I said, well, okay, so let's have a conversation about this. Why would you want
Mm-hmm.
a helicopter landing pad on our roof, right? Now,
Right.
we don't have a helicopter landing pad on our roof, by the way, but but what we did have was this
Uh-huh.
beautiful conversation
Mm-hmm.
about why he thought that was important.
Mm-hmm.
And then the funny thing is Brian, who immediately said that's the most ridiculous idea ever, probably contributed more ideas about LeBron James could come over to our house for dinner and get back in time for his practice that day, right?
The naysayer became the believer, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and all the places we could go and be back by dinner so they wouldn't miss school. You know what I mean? Just like, it was like the sky became the limit. And so it really unfolded this beautiful conversation. And I really got to see into their heart a little bit, some of the things that, were like their bigger dreams. And some of the things we didn't actually need the helicopter or the landing pad to go do, right? And so we did some of them. So I feel like, but the most important piece in that is that if you constantly dismiss, shut down, not listen to your children's, even if they're crazy ideas, right? And allow them to just feel like it's safe to share. What happens is they don't stop believing in you. They stop believing in themselves. And so what we want to do is give our kids that opportunity. Okay. And it doesn't mean that every idea they want to do is a good one, right? Obviously it's not. I mean, but it doesn't mean you can't still have a conversation to try to understand why that was something that they felt important to share or to say in that moment. And from it might come really one of the most beautiful conversations that you ever get to have that you would have missed had you not just opened that up.
Well, I think that goes back to what you were saying a moment ago, was just having the opportunity to speak your voice and being comfortable. You know what? I am valuable, and what I have to say is important.
It matters.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah, that's how we raise adults that actually, and it's funny, we talk about sometimes, and we get into a lot of this, like, and I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, but we talk about self-esteem, right? We really want to build self-esteem for our children, and it is important, but you know what's even more important than self-esteem? In fact, and sometimes the self-esteem, because self-esteem is all about what's going on out here and how we perceive ourselves to fit into that, right? That's our self-esteem. And of course we want to have a healthy self-esteem, but what's really important is inherent worth, which is God-given, and understanding that inherent worth and letting your kids know that they are internally, they're everything, who they are is perfect. And all this other stuff that goes on. And I used to say to my kids, because they played football and whatever, and I used to say to them, just always remember, because sometimes when you're on the football team and you're a good player and whatever, I used to say football is something you do, it's not who you are, right? It's something you do, it's not who you are. So that inherent worth, like who you get to be, right, is really in here, it's not out here. So we talk a lot about, so that's really what I think the second gift is about, is the gift of respect. And it's about respecting others. It's about respecting ourselves too.
Oh, I love that. So to reiterate, the first gift is listen. The second gift is respect. So the third gift is? The
third gift is probably in some ways one of my favorites. The gift of awareness. And we unwrap the gift of awareness by choosing to live above the mark. And when you live above the mark, you have ownership of your life. You believe in your own power to change. You take ownership of it, right? And when you are below the mark, you're literally in denial. You're not stepping up and owning things, whatever. You're literally giving your power away to someone or something. And only when you step up above can you actually make a change. And I remember when this is one of those moments where I went, oh my God, mind blowing. He was probably about 13, because over time our bringing in these these gifts and our
Mm-hmm.
agenda and all this that got to unfold happened over time. It wasn't like we sat
Right.
down the first day and this all developed. This was a journey for us. But
Mm-hmm.
when I had learned this at a workshop, I brought it home and I'm saying to my children, I'm saying like, okay, so do you understand that if you're below the mark, you're literally giving your power away to someone or something. And only when you step up above and you say, this is my life, I'm responsible for it, can you actually make a change that's meaningful in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at David and I'm thinking, is he really grasping this, right? And I said, David, does this make sense to you? And he goes, Mom, I totally get it. So what you're saying is like last night when we lost our baseball game, we all just sat around and blamed the umpire, but we never looked at ourselves. So tomorrow night, we're not going to play any better as a team than we did last night. And I was like, holy wow.
Like, very, very profound for him. Wow.
Very profound. So he took something that I thought was powerful and it made me just absolutely fall in love with it.
Right.
So I can't tell you how many times, even to this day, now my kids, you have to understand, are 28 and 30 years old.
Right.
But if I start giving excuses about why I'm not working out or I'm not eating as healthy or whatever it is, right? They're really say, gee, Mom, sounds like you're a little below the mark. I still get it, right? So it isn't authentic. It's a very and as parents, we don't always realize, especially when they're young, they watch everything we do.
Yes.
They see everything. And you and I talked about that when you were on my show, right? And we had the reverse talked about that. They see everything. And so it's really important that we actually are living above the mark, but it's also important that sometimes to say, sometimes this is why it's called awareness. Sometimes you're below the mark and you are, and you're not ready to step up and own it. But you also have to be in awareness that in that moment of not stepping up, you can't actually make a change.
So if you don't mind me asking, are there things that you would suggest that we could do that if we recognize that we are below the mark, but for some reason mentally we might not be ready? Is there something you could advise us to help make that switch, to help us start being above that mark?
Yeah, well, I do think, but first and foremost, it is about the awareness. I do think sometimes, first and foremost, it's about granting yourself some grace, because because when you start judging, right, yourself, and I used to say to my boys, because then you get into a guilt thing, and guilt can serve us very temporarily, right, to move us out of something.
Right.
But you can never grow through guilt. You can only grow through awareness. And so I feel like it's just this moment of acknowledgement that, okay, here's where I am. I'm not like, I know what it's going to take. I have to really own this. But I think the second that you start saying, it's not about my parents, what they did to me. It's not about what the government's doing to me. It's not about how my children are reacting or whatever. It's literally about, how do I step into the energy of this solution for myself? Because one of my favorite sayings, and I know you've actually probably heard me say this, but you can never solve a problem in the energy of a problem. You can only solve a problem in the energy of a solution. Yes. And so how do we step into that solution? So I think it's sometimes we have to baby step ourselves, right? Like you don't go from, and I'll use the example of getting healthy, you don't go from McDonald's to organic in one step, right? It just, it's okay, what can I do? What's one thing I can do right now? Maybe it's drink more water. Maybe it's get more rest. Maybe it's whatever. Maybe it's if you eat at McDonald's 3 times a week, and please, I hope you don't. But if it's 1 time a week, right? But how do I actually do these little things? And I think sometimes, and if I need to tap into, reading books or listening to audios or whatever, but you do have to own it. You can't just. But you also have to be in awareness and grant yourself some grace that you don't go from here to here. You go from here to here sometimes.
Absolutely. We were having this conversation, like you were saying, when I was on your show, and I actually learned something from Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher. He was saying that back before he got his celebrity status and people was knowing his name, him and his core group of people, every day they strive to do one thing to push them forward, right? And every time that they actually got one thing accomplished, they would celebrate. I mean, granted, like they didn't go out and like have a party, but they
Right.
would take a moment to celebrate doing that one thing, and that helped build that momentum. And that is one thing that I took away from him, that anytime that I do something that pushes me forward, whether I started my fitness journey back in, I want to say it was August, but I made a promise to myself that, you know what, I'm going to stay committed every day, or whenever my workout routine is telling me to work out, I'm going to work out.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to promise myself that. And I've been able to stick with that. But that was one thing I knew I was able to do, and I've done it and I've stuck with. So to your point, it's those little changes that
Hmm.
help us reach that big, seemingly unattainable goal, right?
Right. Well, and there's a book called The Slight Edge, and there's another one called the Compound Effect, and all of it's
Yeah.
about, like, if every day you wake up and you eat a donut, right?
Yeah.
Then obviously you're going to head to the wrong path.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you wake up and have a donut once in a while, it's no big deal. It's the slight edge of
Hmm.
what is it? What is it you do on a day? It's not one day, right? It's not
Mm.
what you do between New Year's or between Christmas and New Year's. It's what you do between New Year's and Christmas, right?
Oh, right.
Like
Yes.
it's that space. So,
Uh-huh.
like, and I think sometimes we have to just allow ourselves, that's what it's talk about, sort of granting some of that grace. But The
Yeah.
Slight Edge is a really great book for kind of
Hmm.
point, like, it's the small little decisions, the daily little decisions that either move you on a path towards where you want to be with whatever it is, or it moves you away. And so
Yeah.
just, yeah. So that's one book I actually love. And now that I brought it up, I should probably go back and read it again. But
Well, I just wrote both of those down to make sure that I get those. And once I read them, I'll message you and let you know my thoughts.
yeah,
Uh,
they're both really, they're very similar in their concept, just a little
yeah.
bit, different, but they're both really good.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, but in the simplistic form of this,
Hmm.
again, just the gift of awareness and choosing to live above the mark. I want to share this really simplistic example, because I feel like if you're a parent and you're hearing this, like, this is the impact it can have. So Brian
Hmm.
comes home, and this is a really short little way to just appreciate it. Brian comes home
Hmm.
from school one day, and I said, "How was your test?" And he immediately says, "Oh my gosh, like, this was the dumbest test I've ever taken." And he stopped himself mid-sentence. I didn't stop him. I didn't say a
Mm.
word. I was just
Okay.
listening. He
Right.
stopped himself, and he goes, "However, given that that's how she likes to test," meaning the teacher, he says, "I guess I should maybe prepare for it differently next time."
Oh man, that
Yeah.
is cool.
Do you see?
Yo, I don't think I've ever taken a test, and while I'm complaining and venting about the test, could actually say, you know what? That's the way she or he does it. Let me reevaluate and study differently.
Yeah, because he's
That
like, "I
is
can
crazy.
complain about it, but how's that going to help my grade next round?"
Right?
Right?
Oh.
So you want to talk about allowing your children to step into the awareness around this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is something that, like I said, to this day, sometimes when my kids are below the mark and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever it is, Brian's kind of there. Like, sometimes right now, he says, "I really got to get back on track with my working out and my
Yeah.
eating right." Whenever he had a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and he's working a lot of hours, and he's like, "But it's important." And he goes, and he said, "And I've got to own it." And he knows that. He knows that it's about him stepping up and owning. It's not
Right.
about him saying, "Well, I'm too busy in my work and my kid."
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a time where that becomes the priority, because
Mm.
there was a saying the other day I saw, especially around health, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
share this because I thought it was so profound. It says, "A man can have a million dreams, but if he loses his health, he'll have but one."
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that
I
good?
like that.
And of course, you can insert people for man. I'm just quoting the
Right. Yeah.
exact
Yeah.
quote
Yeah.
I saw. But
Uh-huh.
so a person can have a million dreams, but if
Uh-huh.
you lose your health, you're going to have but one in that moment. And so, I feel like right now we're at that moment where, if, and they're talking about, "Oh my gosh, we're going to have a vaccine, or we have to have these
Uh-huh.
protocols, we have to have all this stuff." And it's like, everybody's looking out here like, "Oh, save me, save me, save me." The truth is, our immune systems that God gave us,
Mm-hmm.
right, are what
Yeah.
we should be focused on. And I'm not saying, "Oh, this isn't important here." I'm not like, that's not the debate.
Yeah.
But we've had the opportunity to be really stepping into owning, how do we tap into our own innate intelligence in our own bodies to actually build our own immune systems. Because
Mm.
at the end of the day, you know what, there's probably going to be the next virus and the next. I mean, I think that's
Right.
just right.
Uh-huh.
This is where it's going to start. So I think people have to step up, but they have to own it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about out here solving it. It's about what's in here and how we get to step up and own that moment. So.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a firm believer. And yeah, life is going to bring you challenges. Life is going to bring you all different types of issues. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for what you're responsible for. You have a choice to change and direct your life in any situations. Now, again, I know there are people stuck in situations where they feel like they can't get out, but you still have a choice to do something to change
They
your life.
do, and I also think sometimes it is, and we talked about this in the very beginning. But I think when you're in those moments, right, where you sort of feel like I'm between, like I'm in a, there's just a lot of things going on around me. I think if we can look at those again and sort of welcome them as the contrast in our lives, because if we didn't have contrast, then we wouldn't have the opposite of what we get to work and strive forward. Like contrast should inspire us to want to see changes, right? Not to feel stuck or helpless or victimized or whatever, but literally, how do we take those? I mean, I can look back at my childhood and I can say, oh, okay, I'm a victim. No, you know what? That was the most beautiful gifts I ever got, because they made me strong. They made me want something different. They made me, you know, sometimes a little too accustomed to chaos, but whatever, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I can say those were all the blessings I got as a child that made me who I am today. And I think the more that we can step into contrast and view it as a gift, the more that we can actually see our way out of that moment and into the possibilities of what exists.
Absolutely. If I can share a quick story, when I was younger, I don't know, I was about maybe 12 or 13, something like that. But I used to travel back and forth to see my parents because my parents were separated. And I used to take the train. And I remember I was coming back to see my mother. And there was a long tunnel from the train station to where the cabs were, right? So I had all my luggage. I want to say like I had two under my bags and like two in my hands, and you know, doing that whole little duck walk thing, trying to carry the bag. And the tunnel was, I don't know, the tunnel was of like a very long tunnel. And I want to say it wasn't nighttime, but it was like dusk or something like that. It was getting late.
It was getting dark, yeah.
Right, exactly. And along down the corridor there was a Caucasian lady, and if my memory is correct, I want to say she might have been in her 40s. Like she looked like she was an older lady, Caucasian lady, and she had her purse was on the inside of the tunnel closest to me. And as she was walking towards me, when she got about, I don't know, maybe 2-3 yards away, she switched her purse to the outer side. And as a kid, I noticed that. And for years, that stuck inside of me because I couldn't understand why she changed her purse. Like, did she think I was going to drop my bags and grab the purse? Like, I had all these issues that I was fixated on of why she would do that. And I had this hatred and resentment for this behavior that she attributed or to me, that she showed. But I ended up reading this book called The Four Agreements. And in the book, one of the agreements was, don't hold on to what other people's do. That's their responsibility and that's their behavior. That is not your responsibility.
It's about
whatever.
them.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever her reasons was her reason, right? So once I read that, I felt this burden unlift, so to speak, and I realized, you know what? It doesn't matter why she did it. That's her issue, not mine. I have to go. So, and ever since that moment, I realized what other people do in the world has nothing to do with me. You know, I mean, granted, like, I know some things can affect me and some things can like bother me, but
you're human, right? but I think the more that you can realize that it's about them, it's not about you. And also there's a and I like, this is another book I read called A New Earth, and it's Eckhart Tolle. And I don't know if I would recommend it or not, because I have to be honest with you, it's one of those books that I'm really grateful I stuck with. But the first 2 chapters, I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm reading. but it was about,
I know some books like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it was one that I was grateful I got past, because I think about the 3rd chapter, I started to go, okay, I'm getting it. Like, you know, and it was actually a beautiful journey in the book, but it was a rough one out of the gate. But But in there was a story about two monks who were walking, and I don't know if you've ever heard the story, but it reminds me of what you're saying. There were two monks that were walking in the desert, and they came across a woman. Well, they were supposed to be walking in prayer and silence, and they were not supposed to actually be interacting with their outside surroundings. And so they came across a woman who needed some help across a stream, and she was carrying stuff. And so the one monk graciously picked her up and carried her across the stream, and then they walked on. And like an hour later, the monk who didn't pick her up said to him, to the other monk, like, I can't believe you did that. You broke prayer, you broke protocol, you da 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 da. And he said, the other one said, he said, well, my goodness, son. He said, I set her down over an hour ago, and clearly you're still carrying her.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Oh man.
So yes, to just that, you know, that awareness again, and that's why I think this gift, you know, sort of, you know, pun intended, above all the others, as you step up above the mark, are really probably one of the most, if you really implement it into your life and look at it and understand that everybody is standing in their own awareness, and it is about their journey, and you get to choose, right, how you want to respond.
So that brings us back to the gifts. So we have listen, we have respect, we have awareness, and please, the fourth one.
Okay, the fourth one, which I have to tell you, sometimes when I talk about this in companies initially, they kind of go, okay, like, but because it's the gift of love.
Gift of
love. And it actually, it even crosses back over into some of the things we were even talking about. But how we unwrap the gift of love is that we choose to celebrate ourselves and others.
Okay.
And also, like, incredibly powerful, because in fact, one of our favorite quotes as a family was that when you judge someone, you're not defining them, you're defining yourself as someone who is judgmental. It's a really powerful quote. And we've had so many, and this is one of the things I would encourage families, like we would pull quotes, kind of like some of the ones I've shared, right? Whatever it is, but just pull these quotes and have a conversation about them. Like, what does that mean? Like, you know, I mean, don't pull negative quotes, but pull positive stuff, right? That you can have a beautiful unfolding conversation around. And so on our family agenda was people could bring quotes to the meeting, and then we would pick one and go, okay, let's have a conversation about that. And sometimes that, just that conversation about one quote could be 10 or 15 minutes, but really eye-opening, right, in terms of what that got to mean for us. And you know, one time David watched the movie Coach Carter, and in it was that, who are we not to be brilliant, right? And actually it comes from a speech that Nelson Mandela wrote, and I think Marianne Williamson ultimately wrote some of the pieces of it. But it's like, but basically that it's sometimes not our darkness, but our light that most scares us. And what does that mean to a kid, right? Like, we had this conversation, but also that when we allow our own light to shine, we unconsciously give permission to other people to do the same. And so we just started kind of going through that, even just a little bit of that speech and some of those quotes that came out of it, and had this just like amazing awareness around the world, and like, and how we get to look at people and recognize that everybody has beauty and talent and gifts, and we're all different. And that's what makes life amazing, right? If we were all the same, oh my God, like, life would be so boring, right? We might as well be robots, right? And we're not. We're all beautiful human beings, and we're all perfect in our journey, and we don't have to judge someone else's journey. We just get to choose how we want to be in ours, and how we want to interact with, you know, our choices of how we want to interact with that, but we don't have to judge. So that unwrapping and celebrating, but also celebrating ourselves. And I feel like, again, this goes back to, if you can teach a kid how to really tap into their own inherent worth and celebrate who they are. And if they're unique, yay. If they're different, beautiful. It doesn't, like, you know what? We didn't come here to be anyone else. We came here to be ourselves. And the more that we can just embrace that and see our own talents, our own beauty, our own gifts, and our own uniqueness that God gave us, the more that we can step out into the world and actually allow our light to shine. And with that, we expand that to everything around us. That's how you get to show up in the world. That's how you, as a family, and I will say this, that I've thought that when we first sat down and had this family meeting, it was going to be about that hour we spent together as a family. And what I realized, it wasn't about that hour. It was about how we showed up in the world when we left that table individually and together, and how we got to be a part of the solution of making a difference out in the world.
And see, I love that. And as you're speaking, you're reminding me now that me and my family need to have more family meetings, because a lot of times when we have our family meetings, it's usually because something serious is going on, or there's like an adjustment to the family that we need to make. So maybe me and my family should have, I don't know, quarterly meetings or monthly meetings. I mean, just to see how the pulse of the family is, like nothing serious, but definitely.
Well, and the other thing, and I'll share this really quickly, because I'm going to be sensitive of our time, but like on our family agenda, we had a consistent family agenda. And one of the things on there was we had, like what I'm thankful for, and random acts of kindness, and goal setting, and all this stuff that we did, right? And every time we came together, so I'll use random acts of kindness as an example. We didn't always have a random act of kindness, but the fact that we were talking about it starts to put you in the thought process of seeing them. And so I'll never forget the day that David was at football practice, and he came home, and he comes running in the door, and he goes, Mom, if we leave right now, we can go do a random act of kindness. And I'm like, I'm in. Like, I don't know what we're doing, but I'm in, right? So we go jump in the car. And what had happened was he overheard one of his friends talking to his mom. She couldn't pick him up, and he had about a mile walk home with all of his heavy football equipment. We lived right next to the high school. So we jumped in the car. He knew the path he'd be walking, and we picked him up, and we ended up giving him a ride for the rest of his journey home in the 90-degree heat after a football practice. And so, David was like, Sunday night, at our family meeting, he was excited because he got to bring a random act of kindness. So that was really just the beauty that can unfold by just having a consistency and an agenda.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That was sorry. Like it was my connection was breaking up a little bit, so I apologize about that. But David sounds like a pretty cool dude. I at this point, I want to meet your son, David.
I really do. David. I mean, I love both my kids. But David has this massive, massive heart, and I always say he's like an angel that was sent down here just for me. So, which
I'm sure all your children are very awesome and very cool. But
they are.
At this point, I think David has a very special place in my heart as well. Hearing the stories about David, so
yeah.
Very cool. I think this might be a good place to transition into the bite the bullet questions. So don't get me wrong, Cheryl, I could talk to you all day long, but as you said, I want to be respectful of your time and the viewers' time, but let's get into the bite the bullet questions. So audience, if you don't know what the bite the bullet questions are, these are random questions that Cheryl has not seen. She does not know what is coming her way. I'm sure she is nervous and quaking in her clothes right now. Cheryl, are you ready for these bite the bullet questions?
I am so ready.
You are ready. All righty. So the first question is, what motivates you to do what you do?
Oh gosh, again, and I sort of answered, but go back to my childhood. I wanted something different for my children than I had for myself. And it's not that mine was all bad. And again, I stand in complete gratefulness for it, but it is exactly what motivated me to do what I do.
Yes, I love that. What is the one common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
Oh, let's see. The one common myth about my profession. What is my profession? I was speaker. I'm sort of laughing.
No worries, because I'm finding out with that question. That question is a very interesting question because anyone that I've asked that question, they have kind of that similar reaction. Like, wait a minute, what is my profession? I do 20 different things. So what is my profession? So well, I understand completely.
Well, here's what's funny about that is, so when somebody comes up to me and they'll say, oh, hi, my name's so-and-so, what do you do? My husband, this is my husband. He goes like this. He goes, oh, I can't wait to say what she says this time. I can't wait to hear what her response is this time.
Oh, man.
But if I were to say, like, I feel like, and I guess it's a really weird word for me to say profession, but you know what? I believe I was brought here to make a difference. And I think that sometimes people think that, like you started off by saying, is it about the money? It's not about the money. In fact, my husband, like I have this thing that says, have fun, make a difference, make money. My husband goes, could you move the last one up to first for a while? Like, you know, make some money.
Right.
And then you have more fun and then you can make a difference. But my heart's not wired that way. And I think sometimes when people are out like doing these things where they're really trying to make an impact in the world, that sometimes people think it's about the money. And I'm sure it is sometimes, but I think a lot of people are just really driven by their heart. So I feel like sometimes that can be a misperception about what's going on.
Oh, I understand that completely. And that's one of the reasons why I've connected with you. And I feel like you're such an awesome person, because I feel that when you start chasing what you love and are truly, genuinely trying to help people, the money will come.
It will.
So if you chase money, money will run away. It's one of those kind of things.
Well, and it's not fulfilling anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. What's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I think it's probably really grateful that there were things I didn't know. Like if you had told me that I was going to start this journey and it would take till now to get here, I probably would have run in the opposite direction. So I'm so grateful that the journey just gets to evolve and unfold. But if there was something I wish I had known, I think like in the last couple years, I've really come to know, like even more profoundly, although I think it's always been there, but just really profoundly, that it's not about a destination, it's about the journey. And I recently had the experience of talking to someone who's been on this, like I won't say any names, but just like been in this kind of profession, speaking out, doing this stuff and making amazing impact in people's lives, but has reached a point where I think the journey is no longer fun. And it was like this beautiful reminder to me that, like, I would say, like, if you look at this person, they've reached a destination like that most people will never attain in their field of out speaking and making a difference in people's lives. But what I ended up feeling like is that the joy was out of it. So I feel like just remembering that the journey is actually the joy, and not forgetting that, because I think when I first started out, I was doing a lot of doing. I was just doing. I'm not sure I was doing the right things. And I don't think that I was necessary. Yeah. So I feel like it was about coming into this awareness of really doing inspired action and doing things that really bring my heart joy. Because all that other stuff doesn't really matter if I'm not in my joy while I'm doing it.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I think you have to have that joy. And if you aren't having fun, why do it? Right. And once that joy is gone, you might need to reevaluate what you're doing.
Right.
So if you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Now you're going to really make me think. 3 people? Like 1? Okay, 3.
3 people.
Well, I feel like I'm going to be like really. So I've always been fascinated by Oprah in terms of how she's been able to be sort of this hub for people where she's launched all these others. And so I feel like understanding, how she did that, obviously, because I feel like it's like she's launched so many people, and that's really what I want to do, right? I want to see other people come into and watch them explode and grow, right? And their messages get out. So when I do the Kitchen Table Conversation show, it's really about creating that kind of hub. But gosh, I would love to like sit down with her and really talk about how you create that hub, because when I have people on my show, it's because they're out doing amazing things that actually do impact families' lives a lot of times. And so how can I help them excel as well, like to get their messages out further, because that's an even bigger ripple, right? So I think that one definitely would come to mind. I guess I go back and I think about people in the past, whether it would be that were really just so passionate about what they were doing, and and so you think of people like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, or that just really had a dream and really saw clearly. Because somebody just said this quote recently, and I'd heard it a long time ago, but like the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you figure out why. And I feel like those were people that at a really early age knew exactly why they were here and started their journeys. So I feel like just being, you know, in that energy. So, I guess in a weird way, there's a part of me that would love to sit back down and have dinner again with my mom and my dad.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I get it. Your three people is your three people. I like all those
I think
answers.
I
Okay.
said like 7 or 8, but anyway. But
well, again, this is one of the reasons why we do these questions, because the answers are so diverse and everybody's reasoning and the people that they pick are just so profound and just heartwarming, and for lack of better words. But it's just I love these questions because you always get different answers, and it's wonderful.
And you're making me dig. Like, you know, that's a good question. That's a good digging.
So, what makes you feel inspired or like your best self?
Well, I think getting the opportunities to do what we're doing right now. I mean, when I get to get out and share, you know, like obviously that inspires me, because it's exactly why I, you know, it's like my opportunity to, again, you know, maybe one more person gets to hear what it is I'm sharing, which I feel like, you know, it was given to me. It's my gift to give. But I have to be honest with you, I get really, really inspired right now too by, you know, I look back at my kids and I didn't get everything right. I wouldn't trade what I got wrong for what I got right, but it's not like I got everything right. But then you have grandkids and you go, woo, round 2. I get to. I'm really inspired about you know, again, like looking at my granddaughter, you know, Evelyn, and saying to her, like, yes, she's beautiful, right? Of course she's beautiful. Everybody would say that about their grandkids, but it's not about the beauty on the outside. It's about her understanding her beauty inside. And I feel like I get to be a part of that piece with her, right? Because there's so many of the core beliefs that we build up as children. And between the ages of like 0 and 8, like those are like the 0 and 7, 0 and 8, like those are when our core beliefs get built. And being able to be a part of her journey and understanding that now, which I didn't understand when my kids, you know, like I feel like I still got some things right, but obviously just being in that awareness and getting to be a part, that inspires me. But then I think about, okay, so it's not just my granddaughter. How do I get to share a message that actually inspires other parents to understand that same thing about how it is the words we say matter, how we build our children up in terms of their own internal beliefs matter. Well, you've heard me talk about that already, that inherent, you know, worth that's in each and every one of us. And being a part of helping parents to understand that right now they have a superpower. Right now, if your kids are between the ages of 0, 7, 0, 8, you have a superpower. Man, use it wisely.
Oh, you're hitting home right now, because I mean, I don't have grandkids yet. At least I better not. My kids, you listen, not yet. It's not time. But
how old are your kids?
Yes, my kids are 11 and 15.
Oh, so not time. So not there yet.
Yes, exactly. So, but I agree with you, because I think that's almost like round 2 when you get grandkids, because you get to redo some things or tweak stuff that you did before. You have new lessons, new knowledge. So I agree with you completely. And the fact that inspires you, that just makes me think of you so much more. So like, that's just awesome. So if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Well, okay, this might be a little long for a billboard, but in essence, because it's actually one of the things that I say when I close out, and you've heard me say this every show, but ripples don't flow in, they flow out. And if we want to see change in our world, it's going to start with us in our own homes, with our own families first. It's a really long billboard, but essentially that's what, like, it's about what we do at our kitchen table or wherever we connect as a family. It matters. That is, it's not about what happens out here. It's about what happens here that impacts out here. That's how ripples flow. Nature demands it. So if we want to see change in our world, we have to become that change in our own homes with our own families first. That
Exactly.
would be
It
my
starts with
goal.
if I can quote one of my favorite musicians, Michael Jackson, it's the man in the mirror, and start that effect
Mhm.
that way when you want to see change. So, what's the most important thing you've learned so far in your life, and why?
The most important thing I've learned in my life.
Mhm.
I guess that and I kind of brought this up in the show, but I think I've definitely learned that contrast is our greatest gift. And it's in our
Mhm.
moments of contrast that we get to evolve and grow and change the most. So when we hit
Mhm.
those things, and we will, those blocks,
Mm.
those flips in the road, those things that don't feel good in the moment, when if
Yeah.
you can flip them and say,
Mhm.
this is what do I get to learn from this?
Mhm.
What do I get to experience as a result of this?
Mhm.
I think the moment we can understand that, the more that life becomes this beautiful unfolding, ever flowing journey to where we get to stay in our joy, and even in contrast, we can be in joy, in my opinion,
Mm.
and
Definitely. Definitely.
gratefulness, joy and gratefulness. I
Oh.
think if you stay in the energy of those two things,
Uh huh.
and it doesn't mean you're always happy. There's a big difference, right? In my
Yeah.
opinion, the difference
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
because you can be not feeling good about
Mhm.
something and still be in gratefulness.
Hmm. Yeah, one of my alter egos is my superhero persona, Mr. Positivity. And a lot of people assume that I am happy and positive all the time. And that's definitely not the case. But it's like you're saying, once you find your joy and you stay in that gratitude, it
Mm-hmm.
makes everything that much
Yep.
better. Right.
Yep.
So, in your opinion, what is your best tip for making the world a better place? And I think you've already hit on this several times throughout this interview,
Yeah.
but
But I
what would be
think
your
yeah, I mean, I think it's connecting authentically, with people, really
mm,
listening, really being in respectfulness around it. Really,
mhm,
it's really the four gifts. It's really celebrating each other and recognizing,
yeah,
that in the differences that actually bring us together is actually what ultimately makes us strong. It's our uniqueness of each one of us that actually creates the team and makes us strong. And it's kind of, and
mhm,
you can, I always think sports is one of those beautiful, I'm like one of those, I do love sports, and my boys played sports,
uh-huh,
but it's a beautiful, it's like, life imitates sports, or sports
mhm,
imitates life. I'm not sure which way it, ultimately goes, but there is a reality in that. You don't put together a team of all quarterbacks. You don't put together, what I mean? Like it's the,
yeah,
it's the uniqueness
mhm,
and the talents and the gifts of every single person that actually make
yeah,
up that team. And I think when you can look at your family the same way and go, wow, like,
mhm,
I don't need my oldest son to be like my youngest son, or my daughter to be like, they don't need to be anybody except who they are. And when you allow them, there's my favorite quote, literally, I mean, this is my most favorite quote, that children are not meant to
okay.
be molded, but unfolded.
Ooh, I gotta
So
write that one down.
yeah,
I like
that is,
that.
for me, like when you can allow your children to just step in to own who they are and allow them to unfold as they came here to do, and not put the box on it, whatever, just allow. I think, that's where you will see, that's where we'll start to see a difference in how we shift the next generation, by allowing that, we're not here to mold them, we're here to unfold them in the most beautiful way possible that allows them to become the best version
Mhm.
of who they came here to be.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with everything you said, because the differences in the world are what's going to bring all of us together. You can't build anything with everyone having the exact same mindset and the same exact gifts, right? I mean, I'm not a sports person, but I understand exactly what you're saying. You can't have a team full of quarterbacks or running backs. You need everyone playing a different position with different talents
Mm-hmm.
and abilities. That's just like if you go to the symphony, you're not expecting everyone to be able to play, excuse me, everyone to be playing the violin. You need a broad spectrum of instruments
Exactly.
to bring that sound, right?
That's
So
exactly right.
I,
Yeah.
I agree. So we only have a few more questions left, and they're going to get
Okay.
tougher. They're getting tougher.
Oh no.
So
Okay.
if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Um, Yeah, it's funny. 18. Oh my God. I mean, I think, I look back and I realize, and again, you get to do this differently with grandkids, which I love. But I feel like just appreciating more the moment and time that I'm in. I feel like I was always one of those people like, and I had to actually develop some things around this, but like if I put on, if I was doing something, if I was working, I felt like I should be cleaning the house. If I was cleaning the house, I felt like I should be spending time with my kids. And if I was spending time with my kids, then I felt like I should be, outside cutting, whatever it was, right? Like no matter what I was doing, I was never present in that moment. A lot of times I always felt like I should be doing something else. So I feel like I would go back to, and just say, man, just really appreciate every moment you're in and give it like in that moment. You can't, people say, well, you can't give 100% to something, and do other things. You can in that moment that you're doing, whatever it is you're doing, you can give it 100%. So I actually developed a system of wearing hats, especially with my work, because I would put on one hat and I would go, okay, right now, this is the hat I'm wearing and this is what I'm focused on. And my kids knew by my different hats and it was almost, I had to train myself to say, I'm in this moment, I'm focused on this thing. All this other stuff is out here. And if I really think of something I don't want to forget, I can jot it down and then I can let it go. And I had to create a system for myself because it was about being present. And so I think I'd go back to my 18-year-old self and just say, man, just really take in each moment and be present. Don't be thinking about all the other things in that moment, right? Be there. And so I think that would probably be, if I could learn that at 18, I think I could have gotten through this journey. Well, but again, it's unfolding as it's supposed to, but I think it would have been a little smoother through the journey of this moment, right? Of where we are now. So.
Okay. I definitely agree with all that. So let me ask you, and this is a new question because as the show progresses, I know people can go back and watch and like get a hint of what the questions are. So every so often I got to throw in new questions. Okay. So you are the first person, Cheryl, to get this question.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'll try not to mess it up.
What are you afraid of?
Okay. We'll get authentic here. So I definitely, and I maybe this will help some parent out there. This is what I had to do to really help me. But as a parent, I think just having something with your kids. So if my kids were 5 minutes late coming home, my head would go, oh my God, they're in a ditch or something happened or, whatever. That worry track, or even now when I call them, sometimes like, okay, they're not answering. I wonder why. I wonder something, and I definitely am a worrier. And two things that really, really, and I'm going to share this because I think this could be really powerful for somebody. So when I would get on a click track of worry, which does nothing except feed the energy of what, like, you don't want to feed the very thing you're actually, you know what I'm saying? Like that just gives more energy to it. Yeah. So that doesn't actually, so two things I did. One is I'd say, do I want to walk on a path of fear or trust?
Yeah.
And I get to choose. Why would I want to stay on a path of fear when I can step over easily to the next path and it's a path of trust? And I would stand in that trusting space. And just, be in that, on that path. But if I was still a little stuck, okay, I would go cancel, because I'm going to cancel out this thought that just keeps popping in my head. Cancel. And then I send in the angels. Now, sometimes I would think about the angels first, and then I would do cancel. And I'd go, oh my God, I just canceled the angels. So I'd have to start over. My husband, when I shared that with him, he goes, sometimes I don't think there's enough therapy left on the planet for you. But the point is that for me, I could let it go. Right? I could say, so I just, if I really get in a space where I'm worrying about something, which is usually absurd, by the way, but it's just part of my, as a parent, even still with my kids being 28 and 30, and now I got a whole bunch of grandkids coming. Yay. They get to do that round of worry. But so I just do cancel, and I send in the angels, and I decide to choose a path of trust over fear. And it helps every single time.
Oh, I love that. Like I never really thought about that way because again, as a parent, yes, there are moments where I worry about certain different things. I'm not particularly a worrier per se, but there are moments where I worry. But using that moment to say, you know what, cancel, cancel, cancel. Let me go ahead and send in the angels and think of trust thoughts
Because then I can let it
and do
go.
that.
And you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that the angels are on it or God's on it or whatever,
Mhm.
I can let it go because you know what? They're going to do way better than I can do anyway. So I just give it out and I let it go. And then I choose trust.
Which I'm curious, have you? Oh, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's right. Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, have you ever heard of Michael J. Fox's quote about worrying?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so Michael J. Fox, like he's one of my favorite actors, and I love that man
Mm-hmm.
dearly. But his quote about worrying is that if you worry and it happens, you've had to live through it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I love that. That's a good one. And why would you want to do that? Or you've at least lived through it once and you didn't need to too, you know, like why do that to yourself?
Right.
And so I know that I'm sort of wired that way as a, you know, I guess it's a mom, maybe it's more of a mom thing. I don't know. My dad was a worrier too. And one of the things that actually was freeing for me was I thought about how much my dad worried, like, you know, and I always think, oh my gosh, I don't want to stay and worry because if I'm worrying, I'm giving more energy to it. Like, you know, like now I'm going to worry about my worrying, you know, which is like really psycho. but, but I thought about all the times my dad. My dad was one of these people that, like, okay, you should come home this way from work. And then he'd call me back and he goes, you know what? Don't go that way. Go this way because I think the traffic will be better. But then he'd call me back and he'd say, you know what? I shouldn't have told you how to go differently because now you might. And he would, you know what I mean? Like he would take it all off. So I think I
Right.
know it honestly, right? And I
Mm.
appreciate that he cared, but it was really to a level of worry that wasn't necessary. And so I feel like I probably, you know, inherit some of my core belief, right? Probably inherited that. So
Right.
I've had to develop these things, and you know, and
Mm.
maybe it would have been my nature anyway, and I just take after him. But at the same time, I feel like if that's something that you're doing, you know, you're not worrying is never going to solve it, right? So
Agreed. I absolutely agree. So, if in 150 years science fails to save us all, Cheryl, the only thing that is left is a book about your life, what would the title be, and what would the back cover say?
well, I know the book I'm writing right now, right? So I guess
Mm-hmm.
that it would be because it would be my heart, would be the four gifts. So when you talk about the book
Mm.
of the four agreements, right? Like in some ways, I feel like
Yeah.
it's along those lines, right? It's the four gifts,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and and I would say that you know. That it would say about me that you know I felt like that I was put here for a reason, that God gave me a gift to give,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the four gifts that I got to share. And
Mm-hmm.
so I you know I'm just trying to think, but and I guess it would have my quote, you know, ripples don't flow in, they flow out. And if we really wanted to see change out in our world, you know, it started with us in our own homes, with our own families first. And if in 150 years we haven't figured that out, then it's probably because we forgot about the family. So,
Oh, I love that. I definitely would pick that book up in a heartbeat. So, what are the best resources that have helped you along the way?
okay. Seriously, like anybody who has not picked, and a lot of people have, but it's even worth doing
Mm-hmm.
again. But the book that I think was just so profound for my family was The Five Love
Mm-hmm.
Languages, which I think a lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
started with.
yeah, I read
But
that.
I will just tell you, even when I speak, I kind of walk on stage dragging my leg and I go, this is how I walked before I read that book. And then after I read that book, I could walk normal. And
Right.
it's because David's love language was physical touch. And I didn't know that at first. And the kid would hang on me,
Mm-hmm.
like hang on. And it wasn't like a gradual change. It was like an immediate overnight change where in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, I would just get up a little bit earlier. He would sit on my lap and we would interact. And sometimes we, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
but he was physically in my space, sitting on my lap, reading books, whatever we were
Yeah.
doing, whatever. And 15 minutes of that. and it stopped it completely. Otherwise, I was sort of like, oh my God, like this kid never lets me go. And he wasn't getting what he needed because this physical touch was in resistance, right? A lot of my and literally until he got really tired at night, and I'm talking, he was young, right? Until he would really get tired at night, his love tank, as they say in the 5 love languages, was filled up. Right. Understanding that about my kids and letting my kids understand that about each one of us. David knew that Brian's love language was words of affirmation. So as David got older, when Brian would have big things going on, David would put Post-it notes up on his door and say, "You got this. You're amazing. Like, I'm so proud of you." Right. So the 5 love languages, I think, like, a lot of times adults have read it. I give it out as a wedding gift to people when they're first getting married, because if you understand somebody's love language, I think it's so powerful, so powerful. So that book absolutely not just changed me, it changed my family dynamic. Right. Also, Failing Forward was a really important book that we read at a young age with Brian, because Brian's a perfectionist, and it was about allowing him to understand that failing is actually part of the journey and it's all good. Like, it's about the fact that we do fail and we continue, not that we fail, but that we continue. And so, again, it's more like embracing the contrast in our lives, right? So that was another book that I really recall. There's so many, because I read so many books, but because I'm a reader, and honestly, I didn't used to be. And then I started reading, and if you just I made a habit of reading 10 to 15 pages every morning. And if you think about it, if you have a 300-page book, you can read it in less than a month. And I went from never reading a book to reading, I probably read hundreds of books now. But if you ask me which ones were most impactful, I guess those are 2 that jump out immediately to me for our family.
Similar, like, I didn't understand the power of reading when I was younger. And I used to binge watch any and everything. And honestly, I think it was just an escape. But once I realized that, like you, if I could just set aside time in the morning to read 10, 15, 20 pages, your world starts changing. Like, you start changing. It's this crazy, unbelievable thing. So I'm with you. And yeah, like, at this point, I don't even know how many books I've read, but it's one of those things that once you read it, some books you go back to, other books you're like, okay, that was good, but I think I'll pass. But 5 love languages is definitely something that I think I need to go back to. But Failing Forward, I've never heard of that one, but I definitely will. I believe it's
John Maxwell, Failing Forward, and it's learning to understand that failure is something that actually propels us forward. Unless we quit, right? But otherwise,
right? Yeah,
yeah. So
and John Maxwell is one of those people that I love. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the last question, Cheryl, that I always save the hardest one for last. Are you ready?
That's the question. Are you ready?
No, that's not the question. I'm sorry.
I was like, well, that's an open-ended question. Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm sorry. Here's the question.
Okay, I'm ready.
Where can our listeners connect with you online?
Oh, okay. So that's not the hardest one.
Yeah, it's not that. It's not hard.
That's not the hard one. Okay. Well, actually, none of them have been hard. And I actually love, I'm wired to enjoy this kind of conversation. It makes me think and dig, and I love it. I have a website, unstoppableconnections.com. And from there, it kind of expands out to everywhere. But I also have a group, though, and I really would love for some people to come over and join us. We have a group called Family Connection Challenge. We do all kinds of challenges. We're getting ready to, in a couple of weeks, we have a Kindness Ninja Challenge that's starting. We're going to do one after that called Getting High. Of course, it's about getting high on life, but we're going to call it the Getting High Challenge. So, for fun. And we have somebody beautiful who's helping me to unfold that. And we have all kinds of things. We have like a gluten-free coach cooking class that comes on there. And we've got, somebody that works with kids and on just like academics in school and, teaching them, especially in this new home learning environment. We have someone comes on and shares in that. So we've all kinds of experts that pop in there and just share little like 5-minute, 10-minute little vignettes of information. So it's a beautiful community, and we're doing all kinds of fun stuff. We've already had multiple challenges. We did a gratitude challenge. We did a fitness challenge. We did we have a really fun, just launch your family. We have a no duck quacking challenge. I mean, it's just fun stuff. And I feel like if families came over there and just engaged in, they would find something that really resonated with their family to kind of start this communication and connection. So.
Oh man, I love that. I love your mission, and you are just an awesome, inspirational, motivational person. So I understand how important your time is. And before I let you go, is there any last pearls of wisdom or any final thoughts you'd love to give with the audience today?
I mean, I guess sometimes I feel like I sound a little bit like a recording because of that, what I say, but just, man, sit down and connect with your family. And, it's people will set up a business, and how many meetings will you have to make that business successful? Again, I'll go back to sports. If you have a football team, how many times do you practice to actually have a winning season, right? So the most important team you'll ever lead is your family. So how much time are you willing to spend with them making your family actually successful? And if you put it into the terms of what we're talking about. So it's just, it's funny how we carve out all this time for all this other stuff because we want those things to be successful. But then the thing that probably is the most important, if you ask people, what's the most important thing? It's your family, it's your faith, it's your health, it's all those things. And those are the things that for some reason we set to the side as though they're the sidebars in our lives, and they're not. They are the things that are front and center in our lives, and we need to honor those and really carve out that time that's sacred for each one of those areas. Your family, if you want to see change in the world, it's going to start with your family.
Absolutely. And I don't think I can say anything else after that because you said that beautifully, my friend. So with that being said, everyone, this has been Bite the Bullet. We will catch you in the next episode.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay. You're great.